that's a stark and dark reminder of actually what happened, the fact that Dad...
I utterly hated her. With just 4 words, Julian Lennon shattered decades of silence and tore open a wound the world never knew existed. At 62, the son of John Lennon, the man the world called a saint of peace and love, confessed a truth that felt like betrayal, not harmony. For years, he had been the quiet shadow behind the legend, smiling in interviews, polite in documentaries, pretending the past didn't hurt. But that mask cracked the moment he spoke those words. Who was she, the woman he claimed to hate so deeply? And why had that anger burned inside him for a lifetime? This wasn't a tabloid scandal or a family feud blown out of proportion. It was the echo of a broken childhood, the sound of a boy left behind when the world was busy worshiping his father. Behind the fame, the photos, the myth of the Beatles, there was a story no one dared to tell. Until now. Because before the world's John Lennon, there was just Julian, a child abandoned by love. And the truth that would change everything was only beginning to surface. But to understand Julian's pain, you have to go back to the moment when his world first fell apart. Long before the fame, before the headlines, he was just a little boy watching his father walk out the door. One quiet afternoon, John Lennon left home. Not for work, not for a tour, but for another woman, Yoko Ono. There were no goodbyes, no explanations, just silence, and the sound of a door closing that would echo through Julian's entire life. From that day on, the magic of the Beatles meant nothing to him. While the world sang, "Imagine all the people," Julian and his mother, Cynthia, were trying to imagine how to pay rent, how to stay warm in a small flat where the only luxury was love, a love that had been betrayed. Cynthia sold family treasures just to put food on the table, hiding her tears behind smiles so her son wouldn't break. The world saw a golden name, Lennon. But behind that name was a boy who wore second-hand clothes, who was mocked at school, bullied for being the son of a god he didn't believe in. Every time he heard his father's voice on the radio, it wasn't music, it was a reminder of absence. And as the songs of peace filled the airwaves, Julian's heart grew quieter, colder, preparing for the day when silence would hurt even more. That silence became his companion, a constant echo in the empty spaces of his childhood. After John left, contact between father and son was reduced to polite phone calls and broken promises. There were no birthdays together, no school visits, no late-night talks about life or dreams, just distance, cold, unspoken distance. As Julian grew older, the world around him painted his father as a saint, a man of peace, a loving husband, a devoted father. But devoted to whom? Certainly not to the boy he left behind. Every photo of John holding Sean, every smiling magazine cover with Yoko by his side, cut through Julian like glass. It was a reminder that he was the mistake, the forgotten chapter in a story written for someone else. At school, classmates mocked him for being the rich kid, not realizing his mother worked endlessly just to afford a decent meal. Fame brought no comfort, only confusion. How could the man who preached love to the world refuse to love his own son? The anger began to take root. It wasn't loud or explosive, it was quiet, patient, like a storm gathering far away. And behind every interview, every polite smile, Julian carried that storm, waiting for the day it would finally break. That day would come sooner than he ever expected, and it would change everything. And then, one December night in 1980, that quiet storm finally struck. News spread across the world. John Lennon had been shot. The same man who sang about peace was gone in a burst of violence. Millions mourned. Candlelight vigils filled the streets. Fans wept as if they'd lost a god. But for Julian, it wasn't just the death of a legend, it was the final collapse of a fragile hope. Just days before, he had spoken to his father on the phone. For once, John's voice sounded warm, gentle, almost human. Julian believed, maybe, just maybe, they could start again. But fate had other plans. When the bullets fell, so did every word left unsaid, every apology that would never come. There was no funeral for Julian to attend, no final goodbye. Yoko announced that there would be no public mourning, only silence in honor of John's dream of peace. But for Julian, silence was all he had ever known, alone with his thoughts. He mourned not the icon the world worshipped, but the father he never truly had. And yet, the cruelest wound was still waiting, not in death, but in what came after. A will that would erase his name from his father's story forever. That will change everything. When it was finally read, Julian discovered that his father had left nearly everything: the music, the money, the legacy, to Yoko Ono and her son, Sean. For Julian, it wasn't about fortune. It was about being erased. Every melody, every photograph, every memory of his father now belonged to someone else. The boy who once carried his father's name now felt like a stranger to it. The years that followed turned into a cold war. Every time Julian tried to honor his father's memory, he had to go through Yoko, the woman he had blamed for tearing his family apart. Meetings were awkward, full of rehearsed smiles and unspoken resentment. She was polite, distant, untouchable, the gatekeeper of John Lennon's world. To the public, Yoko was an icon of avant-garde art, the widow of a legend. But to Julian, she was the reminder of every empty night, every broken promise, every piece of love stolen from his childhood. That bitterness hardened into something deeper, a quiet rage that refused to die. And yet, time has a way of forcing change. Because in the years to come, something unexpected would challenge that hatred, something that even Julian himself didn't see coming. But hatred, no matter how justified, is a heavy thing to carry. As the years passed, Julian began to realize that his anger toward Yoko was eating away at the very peace his father had preached. He didn't forgive her overnight, far from it. The wounds were deep, and time alone could not heal them. Yet life has a way of softening even the sharpest edges. It began unexpectedly, a photography exhibition, a shared event to honor John's legacy. There, amid the flash of cameras and polite applause, Julian and Yoko stood side by side for the first time in years. The air was thick with unspoken history, but neither of them walked away. It wasn't friendship, not even forgiveness, but something more subtle: acceptance, a silent truce. Julian stopped fighting for Yoko's approval and started living for his own peace. His heart found new meaning in art, photography, and music, not as John Lennon's son, but as Julian, the artist. Slowly, he began rebuilding a bridge, not to the past, but to his half-brother, Sean. Against all odds, the two found connection in their shared pain. Two men bound by loss, searching for belonging. Sean's kindness disarmed him. Together, they watched old videos, laughed at childhood photos, and talked about the father they both missed in different ways. For the first time, Julian didn't feel like an outsider. But as he made peace with others, one question still lingered. Could he ever truly make peace with the Lennon name itself? That question haunted Julian for years, no matter how far he ran. The name Lennon always followed, on posters, in interviews, even in the way strangers looked at him. To the world, he was the son of a legend. To himself, he was still trying to prove he was more than a surname. But slowly, something changed. He stopped trying to escape the shadow and began to shape it. Through his photography, music, and humanitarian work, Julian discovered a new kind of fame, one built not on nostalgia, but on authenticity. He founded the White Feather Foundation, dedicated to education, the environment, and children in need. The name came from a vision his father once described, a white feather as a symbol of peace. For Julian, it wasn't about worshiping John's memory, but transforming pain into purpose. And in doing so, he finally understood. Forgiveness wasn't about approving the past, but freeing himself from it. The anger that once fueled his identity slowly faded into compassion. He didn't need his father's recognition anymore, because he had found his own voice. The world now saw Julian Lennon not as a shadow of the Beatles, but as a man who survived the weight of fame and turned it into light, yet, even as peace settled into his heart, one truth remained: some wounds never truly close, and one final revelation about his father, his mother, and the secret that changed everything was still waiting to be told.